So when President Biden visited Saudi Arabia, he had a fist bump with MBS. But when Xi Jinping touched down in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, they welcomed him with concierge escort planes flying the colors of the Chinese flag. He was received by the top dignitaries and Saudi royalty, including the Foreign Minister Prince Faisal. But more importantly, China is visiting at the invitation of King Salman himself. It was Saudi Arabia that extended open arms to welcome China to build stronger ties together. And this is important because it sets the tone of the Saudi-China summit and shows the kingdom is ready to look eastwards. Now, I think the writing is on the wall. A big shift is happening and US-Saudi relations are at an all-time low. Now, the agenda for this meeting is going to be about forging an economic alliance between China and the Middle East. Both sides want to secure their future outside of the West. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to stop trading with America and Europe, but they want to diversify their interests away from relying just on the Western economy and financial systems, right? And this is how serious things have gotten, and it's a prime example of how all the sanctions in 2022, they have all backfired. China is likely coming to the table with an agenda of energy security, bilateral trade, and de-dollarization. And for the Saudis and Arab states, it's about building outlets and options outside of America. They want to secure their financial future in a world that's looking to go green, a world where energy sanctions are clear and present danger that can cripple their economy. And we must realize that China is Saudi Arabia's biggest trading partner, with bilateral trade hitting $87 billion in 2021. Now, this is in contrast to the US, whose trading volumes have dropped under $30 billion. And this is not some casual relationship or two countries exploring options. They are already doing massive business together, and the next step forward is to form an Eastern alliance that can rival or even exceed the economic power of the G7. And this visit could be the birthplace of Saudi Arabia actually joining BRICS, which will flip the world order on its head. Now, China's agenda on this visit is going to be energy security, and this is what President Xi is going to firm up with MBS during the China-Arab Summit. We are now neck deep in an energy crisis, and we can already see the fallout in countries that don't have access to abundant oil and gas. And because of the price caps and energy sanctions, Europe's industries, they are getting hollowed out, right? They are paying through the nose, buying gas from the United States at extremely high prices. And this is what China is trying to avoid. They know they have to end their lockdown sooner or later. And because China is the world's largest consumer of energy, they must secure long-term energy contracts before they reopen. And that's why we saw China sign a 27-year LNG contract with Qatar. They need the energy to grow. If we look at Germany's example, we can see that $30 billion of Russian gas inputs control nearly $2 trillion of German manufacturing value. And the same situation applies to China. In fact, it's probably even greater because they are still the world's factory and manufacturing hub. Now, Saudi Arabia is China's top oil supplier, providing the country with 18% of their crude oil imports. That's over $55 billion worth in just the first 10 months of 2022 alone, and the commitment is strong. We have Saudi Arabia's Energy Minister Prince Abdulaziz saying the kingdom will remain in this area a trusted and reliable partner for China, and that is on top of Saudi Aramco's promise to prioritize China's energy supply for the next 50 years. Now, Saudi Arabia is going to be an energy partner to China like how Canada is to the United States, and for Saudi Arabia's part, they aren't just doing this for money or to secure long-term revenue. They are thinking further. They are looking to build an economic alliance to access the Chinese markets and technology. Now, sure, technology from the West and their financial markets might be more advanced, but there's always a lingering threat of sanctions. There's a sort of Damocles hanging above the trading partners of the West, especially with all the sanctions being thrown around this year alone. A partnership with China likely won't have those risks. As a Saudi journalist puts it, Beijing does not burden its partners with demands or political expectations and refrains from interfering in their internal affairs. Now, this alone is a very powerful advantage China has over the West, and with a steady supply of oil and gas from the Middle East, China is better positioned to build their influence in the decades to come. So we know what China wants, but what does Saudi Arabia want? Now, if you've been reading the news at all over the past few months, you know it's all about energy as well. The main agenda will be around oil. Now, if China wants to secure their energy supply, Saudi Arabia wants to secure their energy exports to the world. They want to keep OPEC's oil flowing and their revenue coming in, right? Because we now need to see the dangerous situations out there in the oil markets. There's now a buyer's cartel going on, and that is what the G7 countries are doing. They just slapped a price cap on Russian oil at $60 per barrel. Now, price caps rarely work in the long term, we all know that, but the immediate effects can be painful and they could damage Saudi Arabia's oil revenues in the short term. And this is what the kingdom is really trying to preempt and address in case it becomes a reality. Now, OPEC is facing many headwinds in the coming months, and this includes an economic slowdown that will hurt oil demand. Brent crude has dropped below $80 thanks to fears of a global recession, and if for some reason the US decides to slap a price cap or sanctions OPEC oil, it won't be good news for Saudi Arabia. Remember that Biden vowed consequences on the Saudis for the OPEC Plus production cut of 2 million barrels a day, and that's likely one big reason why Saudi Arabia is keen to strengthen ties with China. At the very least, they are trying to secure their biggest buyer of energy for the long term. So even if Western sanctions hit them, their revenues and economy will be safe. But that is just the tip of the iceberg. We need to look deeper, because if Saudi Arabia is trying to sanction-proof itself, they also need to become more resilient against financial punishments, not just energy sanctions. And let's recall that Saudi Arabia, and by extension OPEC, sells their oil exclusively for US dollars. And the petrodollar agreement they have with the Americans requires them to recycle their revenue back into US treasuries. Now, Saudi Arabia alone holds over $120 billion worth of US treasuries. This is great for the United States because they get money to fund their deficit spending, and this constant stream of investment keeps bond prices high and yields low, allowing the US to borrow at cheaper rates to grow their economy. But for the Saudis, this situation isn't really ideal. Western assets can be frozen or even confiscated, like what the EU is trying to do with Russia's frozen reserves. And this is why China-Arab Summit is so critical, right? The Middle East needs to find another outlet to invest in outside of the Western financial system. And there's only so much physical gold you can buy, right? You need access to a bigger market, and this is what China can provide. And we can already see Saudi Arabia and China making moves to invest in each other's economy. Now, on Wednesday alone, the first day of President Xi's visit, Chinese and Saudi firms signed 34 deals for investment across green energy, IT, logistics, and construction. Now, this is key because we can see both sides are aligned and it's all about business. President Xi himself said that he's looking forward to advance Chinese-Arab relations and Chinese-Gulf relations to a new level. And let's look through the investments the kingdom has with China. Now, Saudi Aramco has confirmed a $10 billion refinery in northeast China, the biggest investment so far. Now, this plant is coming online in 2024 and can process 300,000 barrels of crude oil a day. Saudi Arabia is trying to diversify their assets across the world, and they are doing it in China, not in the United States or Europe, and this is a very important aspect. Now, China's Silk Road Fund was also part of consortiums that bought a 49% stake in Saudi Aramco's oil and gas pipeline business worth billions of dollars. Now, this is showing us that both sides are trying to support each other's energy security, and investment money is flowing to and fro. Now, if the Middle East can effectively deploy their money, their capital in China, they can grow their energy business and tap into China's market while getting them to invest back in the Arab states, completely independent of the West. Now, China's taking a different approach from the United States when it comes to Saudi Arabia. It is about business and mutual benefits and not dictating what a country should or shouldn't do. But of course, we have the United States unhappy with this development, warning countries about partnering with China, saying, "Our assessment is that China, in its efforts to build relations in this region, does not have an interest in building mutually beneficial partnerships." Because what the US truly fears is the breaking apart of the petrodollar system, a powerful system that helped America become the global superpower from the 1970s till today. And we already know China together with Russia have been actively trying to de-dollarize the world. It is no secret that they have been taking steps to push for bilateral trade in their own currencies. China's already buying gas from Russia using the yuan, and since March this year, they have been trying to get Saudi Arabia to do the same thing. They would like nothing better than for the Saudis to price their oil in yuan in addition to dollars. Because if this happens, it will signal to the world two big things, right? The first is that Saudi Arabia is open to bilateral trade in other currencies, allowing them to diversify its dependence on dollars. Now, the second is for China to push out their own currency, the yuan, to the world. Because now the yuan can be used to buy Saudi oil, and I believe that will probably be a big point of discussion during the summit. And if Saudi Arabia agrees to it, the rest of OPEC probably will follow suit over the years and decades to come. It won't dethrone the dollar tomorrow, but it will be a significant blow to the dollar as the world reserve currency. We can see the dollar's reserve status has been dropping year after year and it's just under 60% today. So this is not a myth and it could definitely happen at least in bilateral trade volumes in oil, right? There could be special arrangements between Saudi Arabia and China where some of the oil exports to China gets priced in yuan. Now, China's already the kingdom's biggest trading partner, so there is some leverage and convenience possible to make it happen. In fact, it could already be happening on the down low and we just don't know about it, right? Now, President Xi is meeting Middle East leaders across various meetings. Any Gulf or Arab state could really jump at this opportunity as well. And all these are the unintended consequences of the sanctions backfiring. I need to say this again. Countries are getting afraid and they're trying to find alternative partners. But here's an interesting development that could surface. If we see Saudi Arabia actually sign defense agreements such as buying Chinese weapons, that could be a game changer. But I don't think it will just happen yet. Now, there's been a precedent set by the UAE. Just this year alone, they terminated their aircraft deal with the United States to buy F-35 jets. Instead, they ordered L-15 planes from China and are considering buying even more. Maybe Saudi Arabia won't follow suit, but this shows how the Middle East is already diversifying their defense contracts away from the United States and looking towards Asia. We need to realize that the world order is changing as we speak. Ray Dalio puts it best by showing the rise of China and the decline of the United States on the world stage. This meeting of China and Saudi Arabia is a testing ground for how this new Eastern alliance will evolve. It will mostly start off as energy security for both sides. China wants to guarantee their energy supply, while the Saudis wants to guarantee they have an outlet to sell their oil. More importantly, an outlet that's sanction-proof, and they have it with the Chinese. Now, if this works out, we could see further moves from the Middle East to build closer relations with China and Asia at large. Saudi Arabia might even join the BRICS economic bloc. And if China does manage to buy Saudi oil using the Chinese yuan, then the dollar will be in quite a big trouble. So let me know what you think. How significant is this China-Saudi meeting, right? How will the United States react to this? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe as we navigate through these insane times.